what's the benefit of cutting it off? So I don't cut it off. I don't tell people, like, to kind of make sure, to like, I do want to entice people to be engaged and listen to stuff, but I don't cut it off. It's just after the 12th, it's your responsibility to bookmark the damn page. So I'm not going to then kind of keep pointing you to it, but it's there. And if you have it on your podcast app, it's there. And to be honest, you're also going to have the access to the previous audios that are there. So you basically get this little bonus in there, and I don't really talk about that much.
Welcome back to SEOleverage.com. This is episode 95, and today I have a special guest, and we're going to talk about what all the kinds of things we share. It's a small world, not only contacts, but also certain lives take a similar trajectory. So it's interesting. Today we're going to talk about summits, but not the usual kind of summit, but a very particular kind. And I've just invited the person I know that knows most about this kind of summit, which is Anke, who is Anke Hermann. Welcome, Anke. Thank you for joining the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here and look forward to what we're going to cover.
Awesome. So we got connected, and we had I think we hit it off on the first call, just because we have so many things in common. So you're a business coach. I'm coaching people more with SEO, a little bit of business as well. You're completely into tech. I used to be a software developer. You used to be a software developer. We share languages with German, English, and Spanish. You're living in Spain. I'm living in Spain. So it was really interesting how completely unrelated lives seem to have a similar, just so many things in common. And when we had a really long chat, I found out essentially that you're doing a very interesting kind of summit. And as a matter of fact, today your summit is going on, and you seem surprisingly relaxed for being running a summit right now. Why is that?
Well, yes, that's a great question to start this off, because the work's done basically, and it wasn't that much work anyway, right? Because that's the whole thing. This kind of summit, and I must admit, I cannot take the credit for the whole concept. Like, I bought a course, like somebody basically taught it, and if you want to know who that was, I can find the name. But she kind of threw out that concept, and I immediately knew, like, ooh, I'm interested, because it was a way to really jumpstart your email list, or really, give it a good boost by hosting a summit, but without all the stuff that makes summit annoying, right? Because, like we talked before, it's like, oh, people get invitations for summits all the time, and I do get them, and I'm like, yeah, what? delete. Like, why? Because I hear summit or giveaway, that's even worse. I hear that, and it's like, oh my God, I don't have time for that. Like, my first impulse is, I don't have time for it. It requires too much of my time. It might be free in terms of money, but it's certainly not free in terms of time investment. Yep. And I'm like, oh, I don't have time for that. On top of it, there'll be this like, oh God, they're going to hammer me for a week. It's like, oh, you must watch this today because it's going to run out. Or you can upgrade and buy the VIP pass to buy recordings you'll never listen to, right? So in the end, you kind of almost expect that they're going to be like a heavy pitch kind of, at some point. So it's information overload. There's like this time pressure, this constant, like, stirring up some FOMO there. And then it's just too much stuff, right? And you're not going to really do anything with the information at all, right? And I'm like, well, I'm done with those. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to sign up for those. So obviously it's not an event that I want to host. But then I've also been a speaker on summits like that. Mm-hmm. Right. And I've been part of giveaways as a contributor. And I also found that concept doesn't really work well, because either you don't really get any subscribers from it at all, right? Because you're just one of 20 or 30 or 60 or whatever. And so you can tell, like, people like, oh yeah, they sign up for it, but then, well, too much stuff, not even looking at it. So you usually get very few subscribers, and the subscribers you get, the first time you send an email, they go, who the hell are you? Yeah. Like, you get like 30 people subscribing and 28 unsubscribe. And if you're unlucky, somebody marks you as spam. Like, so it's almost like worse than not having them. And so that's also not a nice experience for the speakers. And at the same time, for the host, it's a giant nightmare because you have to herd puppies, like, you know, to be on top of 30 speakers to make sure they send their stuff and the links work and whatever. So it's a giant job for the host as well. So now, basically, this kind of audio micro summit takes all of these things and flips them around and does the opposite of all of that.
So you've talked about it already. Obviously, summits are really challenging. This is an audio version of it, and we are going to dive into it a little bit deeper. You've already mentioned quite a few of the usual challenges with the audits, and there's definitely, I think, one thing we really need to take into account is this information overload. People are just really fed up with all the information they're getting, all the different things they should be paying attention to when that land in their inbox, and it's one summit here, it's one summit there. It's really hard to follow. So this new version, or a different version you're proposing, this audio summit, takes a lot of it away. You've now introduced this topic. It's an audio summit, right? An audio summit. And we talked about the challenges already with existing summits. I definitely agree. There is just a complete information overload. There are summits all over the place, and summits, especially with the pandemic, with everybody being at home, virtual summits were just a new big thing. Everybody launched summit software. Everybody was launching something to a way to actually engage people from their home. So what is now with this? What is an audio summit? How does this work? How can someone who is used to the normal video summits think about an audio summit?
Well, an audio summit is technically, practically speaking, a private podcast, right? So the way it's delivered, and see, that's the thing. The whole point of it is that you can actually be away from the screen, right? So it's literally a private podcast feed. And so when people register for the summit, well, there's a summit page that has all the information of the speakers and the gifts the speakers bring. And there is a player embedded there. So you could literally sit, open that page and listen to the things there. But then there's a link that you can get the whole, like all the interviews onto your podcast app. And you just listen like you'd listen to any podcast. You pop it in the car, or you take it out when you go out for a walk with the dog. And so it allows you to be away from the screen. And if you're a podcast listener, you know, like how much intimacy that creates. Like when you actually don't have the distraction of the video, there is you actually receive more of what's being said. Because I discovered that when I first discovered podcasts as a listener. I thought, oh, this is really interesting. I listened to somebody a couple of times and there's the sense I know you. So it almost feels as if you're like, eavesdropping into a conversation that you're not really supposed to hear. And so that it has that, and it has it's on the go. You can listen to it wherever, right? And the other difference is that, okay, there are these 6 audio or 7 audios, whatever. And the moment the doors open, here you go. You can literally binge listen to everything. So there's nobody who says, oh, you must listen to Gert's interview on Wednesday. Like, no, So I sent out an email highlighting one speaker each day to basically entice people to go back to the summit page or come back and listen. But, pop in and check out one interview whenever it suits you, or if you want to binge, if you have a long drive, you can binge it all. And so it makes it really easy to consume, and it has a real relaxed feel to it for everybody.
I think I really like this concept. It reminds me of a conference. This was years ago. I think this was Seth Godin doing a conference for startups, I think. And they just recorded it and put it up as a podcast. Freely available, no sign up, you could binge listen to all the 12 episodes, or you could just do one a day. You had one of a thought leader essentially explaining their point of view. This was lying around there. He essentially triggered me then to buy a few of his books, enroll on a course, and all those kinds of things. It worked perfectly, and I can definitely relate to this personal relation. I just had a person the other day on a call for SEO where he said, look, I have the feeling I know you already because I have been following your stuff for 2 years. And especially mentioning the podcast as well. I had this before on a podcast we did in Spanish on e-commerce, for example, another one we did for fitness and gym, etc., where people just say, look, I've been listening to your stuff for so long. I know how this works. I know your approach. I resonate with it. So now let's see how you can help us. And my personal theory about this, not sure what you think, is that we just, with this audio version, we take this person with us in a very private environment. So I'm not sitting in a computer. We do also those SEO conferences, and there is Brighton SEO and there's SMX and all those kinds of things. And we do the video streaming. I hardly have time to really attend those conferences in person, but I like to watch them. But it's painful. It's painful because obviously sometimes they have time restrictions. Then you pay for an upgrade to have access to the videos. Then the videos, you can't download them to take them with you. You need to do the streaming. The streaming on a phone is really tedious. You might want to browse around. You can't do anything while it's really, really tedious. So I immediately resonated with this audio version. Obviously, we like podcasting here. This is a podcast recording. We've just seen this work so well over time. And it also allows you, if you want to dive into someone's mindset, like I did with Seth Godin, you just listen to all his stuff for a couple of weeks and just get everything you want or into a topic. And you have the summit now on audience building, where I had the pleasure to also talk about the SEO approach a little bit. If I'm interested, I just want to now spend a day listening to all your stuff while I'm cooking and walking the dog and going in the car, picking up my kids. It just makes so much sense. And sometimes I think just because someone at some point said, this is the structure we need to have, people are like trying to apply this structure to every single situation without thinking, what is it all really about? For us as an SEO agency, it's about taking a step back and having people exposed to our way of doing SEO with an app, with machine learning, with soon AI integration, and making good decisions and not wasting their money. If someone is open to this, I want them just to listen to our stuff. I don't need even their email address. If I have it, great. I can remind them. I don't need their email address. We have the podcast, we have the YouTube, we have a lot of free material out there just for people to actually get an idea of how we tick, so to speak, and then make an informed decision. So I want to engage with this company or I don't want to engage with this company. So I think the audio concept is a complete game changer, or can be a game changer, because it just makes total sense.
It does. And I think what you just explained, I actually see the whole internet marketing thing go more and more in that direction, because we are so oversaturated with stuff, and people become like, in the early days, having someone say, hey, sign up for my newsletter. Oh my God, how exciting, right? So then it was like, oh God, newsletters, like, oh no, another newsletter. So then people would have to get more creative in, enticing people to want to come closer, right? And then we had lead magnets, and they initially were like giant books, and then it goes like, you need something quicker because people don't want more books that they never read. And so I think the next phase of that is really people want to see how you roll in a way that doesn't require any commitment from their point. Like, people are more reluctant now to even give you their email address. It's like your first sale. So you need to kind of offer them something like, prove to me that you're even interesting enough for me to give you my email address. And I think this podcast is perfect for that, because I can, like, it does not require any commitment. I don't have to give you anything. I don't have to give you my time, because I think it's a lot of that. Look, I want to have committed people in the room, like, but it's like, if you pounce on me and request my time too soon, if you want too soon, too fast from me, I'm out, right? Because if you allow me to explore your stuff on my own terms, I'm much more likely to lean in. And I operate like that. And I always find people come say, I just love it, that whole relaxed approach. There's no pressure. There's no, I want to sell now, so you have to be ready now. It's like, people will always buy on their terms. And the easier we make that, I think the better it is.
I think that's a really interesting point you raised there with the time, really, because obviously it's different if I can do it in my own time and in my own time frames, and everybody with kids, with business has a really busy schedule, with or without kids, with or without business. Everybody has a lot of things to do, and I think a lot of things they want to do. So having someone come from the outside and telling you, look, you need to be between 10:30 and 11:15, you need to be here if you want to watch this video. And then you find some summits that even force you to watch the entire thing. You can't even skip it or change the speed or anything. And you just need to sit there if you want to. It's just such a big force. I think rather than chasing email addresses, what I personally find more and more is that the most valuable thing I can get from someone is their time. So if I make it easy for them to assign time to me as a brand,
Yes,
I'm winning, because they have
absolutely.
24 hours. They should sleep for 7-8 hours, right? The rest of the time they can spend with their family, or they can spend it listening to my podcast. Why should I force them into a specific situation or a specific time frame, or only give this to them once? They can't re-listen to it, re-watch it, because this was just once streamed live, and otherwise you need to pay, etc. I'm just building a lot of obstacles for someone who actually wants to dedicate time to me, right? What else could I ask for than a stranger interested in what I want to sell ultimately, and what I want to do? They're interested in what I'm doing, and they're interested to find out if what I'm doing can help them be better off. So if they already are ready to take my time, I think this is to give me their time. It's the most wonderful thing we can aim at. I want to really. I think everybody's sold now on audio summits listening to this, right? I definitely am. We're planning our own.
Yep.
And I know you help people with the actual implementation of this kind of thing. What does this? You are the author of a book called Taming the Tech Monster. So you told me you do a lot of help a lot of businesses getting better at the tech stuff and helping them line up the tech stack and all these kinds of things. What does the tech look like to run such an audit? You said we need a summit page. This would be probably the first position, but what else do we need?
Yeah, I think the summit page is probably the last thing we need. I think first of all, we need somewhere to even put it together. We need a podcast host that allows us to offer private podcasts, right? A private podcast stream. Now, the one that I use for it, it's called helloaudio.fm. And the reason it's a good choice is because they allow you a kind of like a public link to the private stream, so you don't have to register listeners individually. So I can just, on my summit page, there's just like, here, get it on your podcast app, and there's one link, right? And people can then basically get it on their app, but I don't have to deal with individual listeners. Game changer, right? So in where to host the audios, well, I record them, as you well know, because you're one of the speakers. They record it on Zoom, so there's not much there. Well, they need to be edited, right? So you need to pop an intro and an outro and maybe a little bit of music. So basically how you'd edit the podcast episode. So I use Descript for that. I'm a big fan. And but I mean, loads of tools would work for that. So that's your audio. There's your audio, you know. Then I like to create like 1 minute or like 40-second, under 1 minute snippets for each speaker to use for promotional, because you need to entice people to want to listen to this and even to sign up. So I quite like to take the interview and then I grab like a 30-40-second snippet to just like tease people. So I use those. So that's why I like Descript, because it allows me to do that editing all in one go. So that's the production of the actual material, right? Then we need to set up the registration. So you need to have some kind of like an email list. You know, people need to go somewhere, and there needs to be a page where they can register. There needs to be, basically when they register, they get these emails in that sequence, right? So we need kind of basically an email marketing system and somewhere to put pages, like a landing, like a registration page and a delivery page. And I think one of those critical things that isn't talked about an awful lot is we need to keep organized. So and I'm a big fan of ClickUp, but I mean, whatever you use, it's because you have 3 processes to manage in that process, that whole thing. Like, one is the part where you invite your speakers, right? Where you think, okay, who would I like to have here? And okay, what do they need? What information do they need? What do they need to send me? So that's a process you need to manage. It doesn't have to be, it's not complex. You just have to think about it and think it through. And the next part is, okay, manage the editing and the whole, like, okay, everything's producing the material. You also need to send, swipe files and things, because the whole point of it, the reason this is so useful to grow your own audience is because the speakers commit to promoting the summit to their audience. So it's basically the speakers who bring you your new subscribers. So that's why I think, well, we should talk about that, like how to even choose the subjects and the speakers, because that's really crucial for the success of it all.
I think this is a good point. I just found out we have something else in common, which is ClickUp. It's really interesting. You're raising an interesting point. So everybody thinking about a summit, they think the summit is like the lead magnet. So they think this is the lead magnet and people are going to go crazy because I'm hosting an SEO summit. Now everybody is going crazy because the summit is so attractive that people freely give up their email address in order to participate in this great, unique summit with all those great speakers. Why is this wrong?
Totally wrong. Nobody cares.
Okay.
To start with, nobody cares. Like, it's one more thing that floats past them. So I think it is a brilliant way to grow your list, because that's the thing. You get access to other people's audiences in the way you never normally, like, you don't get access to that many people all at once, but you do. And that's the third process you have to manage, in ClickUp, wherever, is to the promotion of it all. Because you can't, I mean, at least I don't say, well, okay, here you go, speakers, you go and promote. Well, I promote the life out of this, right? And I pay a lot of attention to, like, I always look at this through the lens of, like, literally to what, like, very much in line with what you said. It's like, I'm keenly aware that people's time and attention is precious and I have to earn it. I cannot just expect it. So I need to give people something that makes them want to spend their precious time with me, or my speakers, basically. So I will go in and tell stories. I use then those snippets to entice people to say, well, here's something that is worth your time. If you're this is worth your time, right? So, and I basically promote it throughout the whole, like, a week before and the whole entire week. So I have a 2-week window where I really put a lot of effort into promoting this, right? In all different, coming from all different angles, highlighting, like, also, see, I kind of feel as a host, I serve 2 groups. It's about the audience, but it's also, I want to give a stage to my speakers, right? I'm going to go and I'm tagging them in posts. So I want to give them exposure as well, because that's the other part. You build that relationship with the speakers. And for this whole thing to work, before you even think of Hello FM Audio and Descript and ClickUp, you want to really think about what should the topic be. And I think the more narrowly defined and precisely defined your topic is, the better. Like one of those summits where it's like, oh, get people from talk about relationships and the divine and business and SEO. It's like, no, it's like, if it's like, okay, how to grow your audience, because you bloody well need one. One, you're going to basically yell in a vacuum. And so it's it addresses a very specific problem that directly leads into the services I provide. The speakers are offering complementary services. Like, so that's important. You don't want to have like everybody offers the same thing and everybody holds back because they look at the other people as the competition. So the plan is to have a group of speakers who really come at this topic through the lens of their specialty, and it's complementary, right? And the topic needs to be something that leads into the services I offer. So audience building for me is a perfect topic, like your message, the sales conversation could be another one, like a whole bunch of topics I can choose. But this is just one that's really raw, and because people totally underestimate it and not really understand it well enough. So that's why I'm running the same one on the second one on the same topic. But it's really, that's the crucial part of it. It's like with the podcast. If you don't have a solid concept for it and a solid intention and why this is worth somebody's time, it won't be worth your time either, right? So I think that's really the key of it, to say, well, and then you also need to make sure you invite speakers who actually have an audience that is also your audience, right? When I did the first one, and I told, friends, and it's like, oh, I'm going to do this audio summit. And you know how many people go, oh my God, I can be a speaker on your summit. And I'm like, no, you can't. Like, you have no audience. You want to ride off mine. Like, I'm not doing all the work so that you get access to my audience and you bring nothing to the table, right? So it's like, you have to also look at people. You don't have to filter people out, or you must have 10,000 on you. Like, you don't have to be that strict. But if you invite people who have no audience, well, then that's fine. Like, that's your choice, because then no new subscribers will come in from that speaker. If you're okay with that, if you think the speaker alone and the topic they cover is enough for you to attract new people, well, it's not a right or wrong decision. It just needs to be a conscious decision. The whole concept works on the basis that you host it, you give people, and that's the thing for speakers, you're one of 6 or one of 7 or one of 5. You actually get seen. You're not one of 50, right? So it's you give people a stage, but the deal is that they help promote the event, right? So if someone doesn't promote it to, you don't want to have your whole summit with speakers who do not or cannot promote and cannot bring people into this whole ecosystem.
Yes, you have been raising quite a few points here, and I want to summarize a little bit. So I really like that you split this out into 3 different parts in your organization. So a summit is a lot of, whoever has organized an event or even a webinar or something like this knows there's a lot of organization to be done. You want to either have a really good structure or work with someone like you in order to help you with setting all this up, because there's quite an administrative work behind all this, setting up all the templates, editing the audio, setting up the page, the copy, a lot of things. It's a project on its own. But you essentially say, okay, on the one hand, you invite the speakers are the real value for you as the host of the summit, because you get access to their audience. As a speaker, everyone who has spoken on at some event knows this plays a little bit on your ego, and you kind of like that you're invited to a summit. And obviously, even though this person might not be like your ideal client or whatever, but they still expose you to an audience you don't have on your end, and they run the promotion bell for you. So you're kind of very inclined to do these kinds of things, because you never know. I personally know that most summits and most podcasts I've spoken on have had some sort of feedback, even if it's 2 years later. But there is a value in being a speaker on a summit, even if it's a smaller, very much, especially when it's a small one, because the audience is more selective. And then, for example, I really liked how you prepared me for your audience. And you said, look, my audience, this is the level they have. This is the experience they have with SEO. This is what they think about SEO. So now can we pick them up where they are and bring them to, in this case, maybe a more realistic scenario, right? So this was really, really helpful. So automatically, when you started talking to us, to me specifically, you already gave me an idea, how can we provide the most value, going back to this fact that they commit time to the summit, they commit time to me as a speaker. I am appreciative of this time, and I know it's my responsibility to make sure that this time for them is actually worthwhile. And the second thing you mentioned was really obviously the editing and the material, the swipe files, the emails people can send out. The easier you make it for your speakers, the more likely it's going to be to send a promotion for them. And then the promotion itself. How do you, by the way, distinguish, where do you actually promote? If you say, okay, usually you go, the speakers promote to their audience, where do you promote your summit?
Well, I promote to my audience to start with. Like, I promote to my own email list, because people come onto that list from different places. So, not everybody. So, I mean, it's for them too. It's not just to bring in new people. So it's for them too. And I basically, I I'm active on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook, and I promote the life out of it on all three channels. And it's quite, and I look at it's like, okay, it's almost like, well, I bring in as many people or more than the speakers, right? So, and that's fine. That's perfectly okay. You know, there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely. I want to be.
And actually, people when the feedback I've had, and I've put this like, you know, bluntly on the registration page, like I've had fabulous feedback, because that's the thing, people also enjoy the relax, and when they really get something from it, you know, I had people share posts about the summit that weren't like, you know, I was quite surprised. This happened more this time than the last time, that people actually on social media share these posts, people that I've not asked to share it, that I didn't really like, oh, okay, I didn't like, you know, people actually help you out when, especially when they've had the experience, oh, this was really lovely and it was really helpful, because the interviews are also very much sort of a little bit like, okay, we talk about beforehand what it is that we actually want to communicate, to make sure the actual, like listening is worth their time, because that means they come back for more. Right. And then they also help you spread the word. So it's literally win-win-win on all fronts.
I love the concept. It makes just so much sense. I want to be appreciative of your time spending with us here on the podcast as well, and just ask you a couple of tactical questions, really. So I go to this Hello Audio FM site, for example, or some other provider, not trying to promote anybody in particular here, someone who offers and a publicly available link, but still a private podcast, so you can share this link with someone that can subscribe with their app and just listen to this podcast. You have a week of the promotion of this podcast. You have a week where the summit essentially is then hosted. How long do you keep those audios online? How long do you keep this going? How long does it make sense in your experience to keep those audios there?
Well, I'm gonna just kind of like tell a secret, like I don't close them off.
Okay, makes sense.
You know, it's like I will stop. I stop talking, like I stop promoting like nobody can sign up anymore after the 12th. Like, okay, that's when sign up closes. But anybody who signed up, they have like, it was literally in like the original idea, like the person who initially came up says, oh, you're gonna just cut it off, and I'm like, why? You know, it's like, how many times do you go, oh, Jesus, yeah, I wanted to listen, I didn't have time, you know, something happened, the kids, like, what's like what we talked about before, what's the benefit of cutting it off? So I don't cut it off. I don't tell people, like, to kind of make sure, you know, to like, I do want to entice people to be engaged and listen to stuff, but I don't cut it off. You know, it's just after the 12th, it's your responsibility to bookmark the damn page. You know, so I'm not going to then kind of keep pointing you to it, but it's there. And if you have it on your podcast app, it's there. And to be honest, you know, you're also going to have the access to the previous audios that are there. So you basically get this little bonus in there, and I don't really talk about that much.
Makes a lot of sense. I think it could even be interesting to maybe eventually turn this into a public podcast and just let it sit there with 7 episodes, so people can on iTunes find it and possibly answer, okay, this is a summit on audiences. You can just listen to this, and maybe you get 10, 20, 50 listeners every month to this just by having it publicly available eventually, right? Definitely an asset. I love it. Last question. Where can people go if they want to know more about you, possibly want to have your help organizing such an audio summit? What would be the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, I'm kind of everywhere. You know, ankehermann.com is my main website to just get in touch with me. You know, if you kind of looking to wonder how this whole, like how all the pieces fit together, then create, connect, and flourish.online is your place to go.
Awesome, perfect. We're definitely going to link to these things in the written version we have over at seoleverage.com/podcast. This is episode 95 with all the resources, the podcast host mentioned as well, and obviously your websites. I really appreciate the time and your expertise you shared here today for our listeners, Anke. Always really nice to hear your no BS approach to things. really enlightening. I very much enjoy it. Whenever we can think about things differently, and I think whenever we can find like the perfect match for the perfect person, we see this in SEO, we see this in conversions, we see this in digital marketing. Whenever we find this perfect match and stay away from like the huge audiences and make this just as relevant as it gets, usually results come, and I can definitely see the Audio Summit be a really big part of it. Thank you so much, Anke.